Hello, welcome to Conversations in Calvinism. I'm Dan Chappa, and joined as always by my good friend Turton Fan. How you doing, Turton Fan?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Hey, I'm doing wonderful. I'm doing wonderful. So, Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to everyone that's able to watch the show. And I hope you had a great time. We had a wonderful Christmas at my house. It was good family time. Good time going to church and programs and things like that with the services and everything. But also just really nice to have some time off from work and time to spend with family and everything. So I hope you guys had a great time.
Doing great. Happy for the new year. Looking forward to the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea, if I remember correctly. So nice big number.
Yeah.
Not quite as round as like 1500th anniversary, but still quite a nice number. Looking forward to lots of new things in the new year. And speaking of new things and a new year, we're doing something that's new for us as a podcast. I'm calling us a podcast. I know we're a visual medium right now, but in Rumble, that's one of the categories is podcast. So I think the usage of podcast now encompasses our video logs. So in the spirit of that, the new to our podcast is a top 10-ish kind of idea. I love this name, by the way. Sorry, Pseudo Jerome of Prague. Nice. I don't know
Nice.
if there is actually a Pseudo Jerome from Prague, but anyway, it's good to see you here. Let's see. So, and oops, while I'm greeting people, hello to Algo. I don't want to leave people out. Hello to Michelle as well. So, the why don't you explain what this is? Because you have better grasp on it than I do.
So this will be for fun. We'll just go through the top 10 most impactful theologians in church history. So what I mean by impactful, so you might not be necessarily the most orthodox of theologians, and they might not necessarily be the most intelligent of theologians. So like it might be, let's say, Francis Turton was one of the smartest heads of all time, and he was, but no, this is more a question of impact. But impact, I will say in a positive sense, like they have to be orthodox now. So you could say Arius was very impactful, and he was. It's just impactful in a really heretical way. So that's not the direction we're going. We're going with in a positive direction, and there'll be some controversy and disagreement. What is the exact boundaries? Like where does Charles Finney fit into that? Like, he was definitely impactful. Was he orthodox enough to make the list or something like that? So maybe there's going to be some disagreements there between Turton Fan and myself, and that's all good. So we'll do this in sequence. So Turton Fan, you're welcome to go first, and then I'll go second. We can talk about your list. We can talk about my list, and then I'd love to hear from folks in the chat. Like, what do you guys think? And would you reorder them? Would you add names? Write in names so we can use the tier maker website, which is pretty cool as a useful tool. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah. So.
And there's a pseudo chat. Good to see you, wherever you may be.
Yeah.
Our presumably Czech friend who's joining our chat. In terms of introductory thoughts, echoing what you've just said, these are top 10. Our thought here is top 10 impactful on a broad scope, not what was most impactful to me personally, because then I might need to list people who like my friend James White or David King, who have been impactful to me, but not as impactful as somebody like as a world famous theologian from 500 years ago on the grand scale of things. Not to say that they don't have that impact or shouldn't have that impact or anything else. And also, I think you said like there's some theologians who are really significant or who would be very significant had more people read them or something like this. And we're not trying to capture that. But then again, I mean, some of the names, let me start sharing the screen. he's, he's sorry, I'm getting distracted. He says he's not really Czech. He's pseudo-Czech. Pseudo-Czech from pseudo, hopefully from actual Prague. We're really going to be in for a loop. So here's what this website looks like. Minus the, which were really distracting. And this is designed to allow us to kind of rank different people. So we have Origin, we have Chrysostom, but we also have people like Sproul, and it's a little bit like in some some cases maybe this will be like comparing apples and oranges, but hopefully with there's Arminian with enough apples or enough oranges, we'll be able to create something of use to y'all, or at least of interest. Feel free, as Dan mentioned, to chime in the chat, and feel free to try to persuade Dan or myself. Try to do it. I don't know if it's going to work. We're going to try to share Dan's, and the ranking system right now is S for like superior, and then A, B, C, D as lower ranks than S. I think I don't remember what this ranking system is based on. It feels like it's one of those fantasy role-playing game rating systems, but I don't really know. In any event, we're just using it as a handy tool. So that said, would you like to kick things off by picking the first theologian for us to evaluate?
Yeah, sure. I can go.
Which one? Would
so I can go first with my number one pick, I guess. Yeah. So if you bring up my list, I'll slot in my number one, then you can slot in your number one, and then we can go back and forth like that, if that makes sense. So
sure. Although I'm not 100% sure I can tell you who's my number one from all these things, but at least, yeah. I mean, you can whichever one you like to start with.
Sure. So for me, number one would be Athanasius, and for
find. can you help me find Athanasius?
Oh, sure.
Here, it's column and row or something like that. Help me find him. I know it must be here somewhere.
Yeah, hang on. I got to make the screen a little bigger. Okay. Yeah, now I can see a little better. So Athanasius is Athanasius. Where is he?
There's Anselm. That's not, there's Athanasius. I found him.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
All right.
Okay. So, yeah.
Let me move him up here. And this is my ranking, but you're putting him number one. So let's share your tab instead and see if I can find him again. Hopefully, yeah.
So the reason why I'm putting Athanasius number one on my list is because he handled the biggest heresy in church history, that, from my opinion, the Arian heresy. It had the largest sway, overturned a large number of churches, and it was just devastatingly impactful, basically saying that Jesus Christ was a creation, not God, and that he wasn't eternal, that there was a time when he was not, and that sort of thing. And Athanasius had to face down significant obstacles, many significant obstacles, in fighting against that heresy, and he had to do a lot of research, do a lot of writing, do a lot of explaining, and he ultimately was successful. So he's what an apologist should be. As far as I'm concerned, he was tops of the list. So that's how I would kick things off, I would guess.
All right, let me put. I would put him pretty high on the list, but I would put him a little bit lower, not because I disagree with anything you just said, but just because I don't place his role in the contrarian controversy. I don't see him as having as decisive a role as you've identified, and I would see others as at least also significant, but I do think he's very high on the list, partly because of the against Arianism, partly because he's such an important author on things like the canon of Scripture. And he's methodologically sola scriptura. So, yeah, I would put him very high. I'm not sure I'm ready to put him in the very highest tier, but I would definitely keep him up there. Sort of near the top, at least.
Okay.
Sorry.
No. That's good. Okay, so, yeah, so we're pretty close to the same page, although there's some disagreement there so far. But that's good. That's what you want out of these. What you want out of these things. So
I'm gonna put. And this is a challenge that someone just highlighted in the chat, because impactful doesn't always mean good. But
it's not. No.
But we're trying to say impactful. We're trying to emphasize the impactful for good. Like,
yes. Yeah.
I'm going to put even higher than Athanasius on here, Jerome. And that's despite his terrible take on Mary's perpetual virginity and his cranky attitude and his attitude about marital relations, his asceticism, and so forth. I think he's extremely influential in terms of the text of Scripture. And he's also strongly anti-Arian and also strongly anti-Pelagian as well, although not necessarily as strongly as Augustine, but certainly up there. I think he's also important because of his emphasis on the maintaining the canon of Scripture of Jesus and the apostles, who were Jewish, as distinct from a Greek canon of the Old Testament. And his emphasis on the importance of that. Those are things that were very significant in his time, and continue to be significant afterwards. Not all of his translations were right, but his ad fontes approach to translation is critical. His interest in textual criticism, while not as thoroughgoing as one might want, but yet it's also quite important for church history. So that's why I'm boosting up Jerome a little bit higher than Athanasius in this on my list. And let me kick it over to you for any thoughts about Jerome.
Yeah. Wildly different way of thinking. So you're just straight wrong. So I don't know how you could rank him higher than Athanasius, but I will leave that to you. So I agree with you. He is tremendously beneficial from the standpoint of preserving the New Testament, and impactful in terms of getting it out to the people, so to speak. He had some pretty big issues, I would say, but I'll set that aside and say that he's gonna be. We'll see if he makes my top 10 or list or not. I'm gonna hold off on throwing him on the board just yet. But
you don't want to put him out. You don't want to rank him at all.
He might not make my top 10. Maybe he will. We'll see. We'll see as we go along.
Should I tentatively then put him in the lowest tier?
That's
because you can put you can do 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like you can go across for your top 10.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll go ahead with my number 2, and we'll see if we can find him in here.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Martin Luther.
Yes. So also in the top tier, but number 2 in the top tier.
Yeah, you can put him top 2. You can put him in S tier, but yeah. So the church had massive problems and Luther he tried to fix it from within, but had to hit the reset button. And in doing so, was kind of running for his life nonstop. He's similar to Jerome's impact in that he translated the Bible into German, but that's not really the impact. The main thing is that he's famous for sola scriptura, justification by faith alone. Now, it's not that he invented those things, but he certainly rediscovered them and had to kind of dig them out of a big pile of rust, unfortunately. And so, yeah, I would put him at least at this level, because the issues that he dealt with were massive and the oppositions that he faced were massive. Now, he's known to have some issues, perhaps, he insulted people too much. Maybe he had some biases and that sort of thing, and certainly he's known to be emotional, maybe a hothead, so things like that. Certainly he wasn't a perfect guy. But in terms of impact of church history, like, how could the world have been radically different than it was? I got to put Luther way, way up there. So I'll go ahead with 2 for Luther.
All right. Let's see. Let me share my tab. Let me find the Luther icon and let's see. I'm not saying he's C. I'm just moving it up here for. I would definitely put him as one of the most impactful in church history. I would. I wouldn't. I do have a lot of problems with him theologically, but I do acknowledge that he had a huge impact, especially from my standpoint at least, especially in terms of rallying Germans in opposition to Rome, its political authority in Europe. And being able to have Germany stand up to Rome politically was hugely significant for the Protestant Reformation. I think I would probably give his theological insights less significance because I think a lot of other people were saying the same things. But it's certainly the case that his name has, it's for better or for worse, he became sort of the lightning rod for the early Reformation. So I think his impact needs to be really high on this list. Does it need to be above Athanasius or below Athanasius? For me, I'm going to put him right now above Athanasius. So let's see. Now I've got to pick somebody else who I think is very significant. Well, I'm going to go with Augustine as my next. Sorry. I'm going to go with Augustine. I'm putting Augustine higher than Luther, partly because Augustine is an inspiration for Luther, partly because you can't have Western Christianity without some kind of influence of Augustine. He is his theological works, even the things I don't agree with, continue to be significant through Western Christianity for a really long time, and ultimately provoked or inspired the Protestant Reformation through Luther, an Augustinian monk. I'm not crazy about lots of things he said. I'm not crazy about lots of his views, but this isn't the who's our closest theologian. It's one of the most impactful. So that's my thought on that one. Let me kick it over to you for your thoughts on Augustine.
So I'll put Augustine third. So right behind Luther. You can put him in S tier, but yeah, right behind Luther. And I agree with you. I mean, so in terms of refuting the Pelagian heresy, in terms of dealing with Donatism, those things are huge. And although he certainly wasn't the first, like kind of the clearest and most articulate in terms of depravity of man and the original sin and that sort of thing. and the necessity for God's grace. Those things are vital. He has other impacts. So, we were talking about the canon of Scripture. His name will be up there, and maybe not such a good way there. Maybe so, or at least arguably, there's going to be two sides to the knife there in terms of his take. But he certainly was more in favor of the the Apocrypha than certainly Jerome. Yeah, and let's see, he is also quite instrumental. Well, I think there's certainly a lot of precedent before him, but in terms of his doctrine on baptism and baptismal regeneration of infants, which I don't think is particularly helpful, but I have to acknowledge that there's a humongous impact. So Augustine played a huge role, and then also in terms of frankly, proto-Calvinism, I guess, that sort of thing. He sticks out, and that had a huge impact. So I have to acknowledge that, whether or not I love it. I have to say he was extremely impactful. So that's my top three so far: Athanasius, Luther, Augustine. All right, let me jump out of this view and see. Okay. So we've each gone three so far. I'm curious if anyone in the chat has a different take on the top three. Anyone out there wants to throw something up? Love to see if there's some differences or different opinions. But while we wait for that, well, I can see, some people like Luther, people like Augustine. So, anyways, so back to you, but let's go ahead.
Your pick now, because I threw up because the other one was Jerome, so there's four. So we're back to you to pick one.
Okay, so
it could be your number four, but it's up to you.
So next has to be, I guess, one of the Cappadocians, and I will go with Basil as representing them if we can find Basil in this list.
There's Gregory of Nyssa.
I see Basil the Great. He's got the two crosses on his lapels. Let's see. It's got Cappadocian. So I see Gregory. Hang on, let me make it.
Sorry.
Where did he go?
Sorry. Is it currently on the screen or currently not on the screen? Oh, there, Basil the Great.
There, yes. Yeah, let's throw him A tier. So you can move him down off of S tier to A.
You got it?
Yeah. Okay. Now he's standing for a number of fathers around the same era. So his impact is the issue that he dealt with, of course, when he's talking about the Trinity and he's talking about the incarnation and the full humanity and deity of Christ and that sort of thing, is very, very, very important. So I think I just have to recognize him because of that issue. He would probably be higher than Augustine if it wasn't for that, because the issue that he's dealing with was more important than the issues that Augustine was dealing with. But there were many others that aided him, but he stands out as maybe, although Gregory also would be another one, but I'm just going to pick Basil as a representative for that group.
Which Gregory? Gregory of Nyssa?
Yeah, Gregory of Nyssa. Yeah, but I mean, just leave him be. Basil will have to be the federal head for the group.
The federal head.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. All right. So I've taken the opportunity while you were talking to drop him onto my A tier as well. Definitely a very significant early writer. And especially the way we're considering him as representative of a group, that's all the more significant as a group. I would rank him as a little bit lower. I think I would rank him as a little bit lower than Athanasius. So I'll keep him on my A tier for that reason as well. There's, Basil's writings are, one thing I like about the Cappadocians in general is their emphasis on the scripture and their emphasis on avoiding interpretations that are arbitrary or capricious when interpreting scripture allegorically. So just because you see that their cross has 4 corners doesn't mean that any reference to 4 is a reference to the cross, or vice versa. Just because something says 4, you don't have to look for a spiritual significance to the number 4, just because the 4 is in the text. So that requiring scriptural authority for scriptural interpretation is one of those very important insights the Cappadocians provided. I wish it had even more impact than it did, but I think it did have a big impact on the Protestant Reformation once it got started. So I agree that it's a significant group. We have a recommendation. Well, let me provide one, and then we'll go. I see we have at least one recommendation, which is Palamas is one of the recommendations.
We have a better recommendation than that right here. So what's above S tier?
Above S tier? You want to put the super duper.
Yeah, no.
We can come back, and I don't know if Louis de Molina was actually on the list, but we can include them too. I mean,
we can write people in. In fact, there's one for sure I'm going to have to write in. But let's. Yeah, no, I'm joking. I wouldn't put him as one of the most impactful of all time. I mean, not at this level. We're talking pretty big stuff right now.
Let's see. It's very tough to pick somebody in this category. I'm going to have to go with Origen as someone who's even more impactful than Athanasius on church history. Now, not all of it is for good, but I think his writings are so extensive, they're so well preserved, despite there's a lot of loss, but so much of them have been preserved. Although he gets condemned for certain errors by subsequent church councils, his works still survive. You would kind of expect them to just be, to die out, but they managed to survive the negative references. Rufinus, working with in competition, I would say, with Jerome, provides some translations of Origen work which help preserve them in Latin. It helps him to be an influential Christian writer in both the East and the West, long after his death, and even long after his general condemnation for certain erroneous views that he had. And some of those errors are kind of serious, but again, like what he shares with Jerome is this interest in the originals. His Hexapla is really significant for understanding the Old Testament as he understood it. In other words, trying to get behind the early mentality that he represented in Alexandria for Christian scholarship, and his ideas, even if they're not attributed to him, echo down through the ages. Some of them good, some of them bad, but they just continue. They continue echoing. Thankfully, some of his really bad ideas, like universalism, largely get filtered out. And even to the point where, with his surviving works, people are kind of on the fence. Was he really a universalist? But in any event, that's where I'd throw Origen on my list, somewhere pretty high up on the list.
Okay. So for me, he's not going to make my top 10. And he would have had a greater impact if he just spent more time copying scripture. Like, the only thing that I really appreciate about Origen is the fact that he copied so much scripture, so we can see that the early church had scripture. But like I said, if he had spent his time just copying more scripture rather than commenting on it, or whatever else he was doing, it would have been better. He fits a need. Yeah, and for this part, I would put Tertullian in the same boat. With the Apostolic Fathers, you have a lot of good stuff happening right off the jump, and then around 300 you have a lot of good stuff. But in the 200s time frame, there's kind of a not so many writings that have survived. So it's good that we have him, and the fact that, like, if you combine his stuff with Tertullian, you can almost reconstruct most of the New Testament between him and Tertullian combined. So that's really, really important for church history. But I would take, a couple extra copies of the Bible from the same era than, versus whatever Origen put out. So that's me personally. But I get what you're saying about his significance, but I think that the main significance is that he was able to accurately copy the Bible a lot of times.
Makes sense. Would you, in terms of didn't make your top 10, but above or below Jerome?
Below Jerome. Jerome might yet make my top 10. We'll see if he fits in there.
All right. All right. So your pick. Unless you want to pick Tertullian, which I assume that was just a passing remark.
No, not Tertullian, for the same reasons. Well, actually, Tertullian, frankly, I'd rank higher than Jerome. But okay, even though in the end he fell away. So for me, next up would be Aquinas, and I'd put him in the A tier. Now
I can find him. He must be here.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think I saw him down at the bottom, but maybe that was not. I think I just saw him. Okay, so on the bottom row after Knox, then about 5 over.
There he is.
There you go. Yeah. So you can put him on A tier behind Basil. Yeah. So Aquinas is the first one on this list that's on this list because he was impactful primarily because of his scholarship. Now, the others were great scholars. Don't get it twisted. But they were great scholars at the right time, hitting the nail on the head on the right problems. Whereas there wasn't really a big problem. I mean, there's problems, but there's always problems, but it wasn't really big. That's not what Aquinas is here for. It's because he was super smart. He was really, really, really smart. And, his arguments for the existence of God, his synthesis of philosophy with scripture and theology, his, voluminous writings, whether it's commentaries or his Summa Theologica, Summa Contra Gentiles, like some of his works, they really are impressive. And he's got a clear writing style. He unfortunately was misled by some forgeries from the church fathers, like thinking they were actually real when they weren't. So that gets embedded into his work and maybe impacted his views too much. But he was impressive. Now, I'm not saying that everything that he said was right. Obviously, I disagree with him on transubstantiation, but even still, like, I think his version of transubstantiation is better than a lot of what you see, frankly, in Roman Catholic circles today. Let's see. Anyways, I guess I'll pause here and just say, in terms of impact, since he's the, I don't know, top dog theologian for Roman Catholics, it's hard to deny his impact.
Great. Let me switch over, share my list. For me, I'm going to put him on the. I'm going to put him ahead of Luther, but behind Augustine. I do think that Aquinas could be rightly described as the father of Roman Catholicism, despite his rejection of the Immaculate Conception of Mary and some other issues that he has. I think he has enough of the core aspects of Tridentine Roman Catholicism to kind of view him as sort of the father of that. And intellectually, his ideas are so powerful that he casts a great shadow over the rest of the medieval scholars. There's not, I can't, there are plenty of other medieval scholars of note in Western Christianity, but I think that Aquinas stands higher in his impact than his contemporaries. So there's actually some really, in terms of quality, I think there's better medieval theologians than Aquinas, but in terms of impact, I think it's hard to deny that he has a huge impact. So justly in the top 10, I'm putting him a little higher on mine than you are on yours, but it's certainly a very impactful author. I'm going to add, and you're not going to like this one, I suspect. But if I know I saw him on here earlier, and I'm going to try to find him again.
You looking for Calvin?
I'm not looking for Calvin or Knox, but one of their contemporaries, Theodore Beza.
Oh, I think I saw him up top. Yeah. Top row, middle.
There
you go.
Yeah, where he should be. I'm just kidding. I'm going to put him someplace after Luther. It's hard for me to rank him. I guess I probably have to say I think he's less overall, maybe less impactful than Origen. But my reasons for ranking him so high are these. He's extremely significant for protecting the French Reformation from the Pope and allowing the French Reformation to survive as long as it did. He's a very significant figure for that, and that was also very significant for ultimately for protecting the English Reformation, because without completely destroying the French Reformation, the English Reformation's light was able to stay lit much longer as a result. And also, it was also kind of provided a nice buffer for Holland and as well for the German Reformation, which was already flourishing. Having Beza in Switzerland supporting the Swiss Reformation and supporting the French Reformation is huge. His impact on the New Testament should be undeniable. He was massively influential in adjusting the text of the New Testament. One of the series that I'm working on Revelation 16:5 is solely because of Theodore Beza's influence, and his ideas of how to translate the Greek are also very influential. He's also involved in the Calvinism, Arminianism controversy, but partly as a teacher of some of the influential, subsequently non-Calvinist theologians, but also as kind of the pivotal center for a while of Calvinism. So I put him pretty high on the list, not because I think he's a better theologian than, like, for example, Calvin was, or that or even that he's that profound a theologian himself. Just in terms of the impact that he had, I think it was a huge impact. So that's someone. I doubt that he's on your top 10 list.
No. Yeah. So for me, yeah, he can. Where would we put him? He's not going to make my top 10. I'll put him ahead of Origen, but behind Jerome. So in terms of his work on scripture, which is probably, in my opinion, the best thing he did, what I give him, you see, the problem is, like, I think he's overshadowed by two giants, Erasmus and Tyndale. And between those two, I think I would say that Tyndale was more impactful. But frankly, Erasmus too, though. I mean, they both were just giants in terms of the preservation of scripture in the work that they did. But and then in terms of whatever he did for I can't put his impact above Calvin's, who would I probably have to put next on my list. So if you could throw Calvin up behind Aquinas at the A tier, for me, if we can find Calvin. So obviously I disagree with Calvin's theology. I see him, on the row with Cyril, but all the way to the right, or about 4 from the right. So down one.
I found
there you
him.
go.
Oop,
Yeah.
I lost him. All right. Found him again.
There we go.
So
yeah,
after Aquinas?
After Aquinas. Yeah. So, basically heading up the things that he did in Geneva, basically he trained a lot of preachers and theologians and essentially fueled the Reformation. And then in terms of impact, so he was more scientific than Luther, right? Luther was, he came in like a wrecking ball, right? But Calvin was precise, and his historical grammatical analysis of scripture really stood out, contrasted to the allegorization of scripture that you were seeing in the interpretations. So his hermeneutical method was really, really, really important, and his commentaries exemplify it. They're actually very good. I'm not saying that there's not better commentaries out there today. Of course, there's been a lot of work, but a lot of that is built on his shoulders. So I have to give him a lot of credit on that, a lot of credit on protecting the infant Reformation as it was by strengthening Geneva and training people up to get it going and keep it going. So I have to give him a lot of credit. Of course, there's things I disagree with, like, maybe he went too far in Iron Fist in Geneva, and people got burned, or maybe certainly he went too far on Calvinism, but I have to give him a pass on that for all the good that he did.
Sounds good. I guess I can. So I'm torn. I've just dropped him in above Beza because
I win.
I've dropped him in above Beza because I do think that he was also, he's not as influential on the text of scripture. So I don't know. I'm waffling back and forth whether to put Beza or Calvin higher. Maybe I don't know. It's tough for me to be too dogmatic about it. They're both very significant figures from the same time period. Calvin is a bigger name. Nobody talks about, well, I don't know about nobody. It's hard to say nobody, but few people talk about being Bayesian in the sense of following Beza, but lots of people get called Calvinist, even things that have nothing to do with the 5 points of Calvinism, which really might actually be better associated with Beza than Calvin. People argue that they are better associated with him. But in any event, his theology, his resistance to Roman Catholicism, his answers to the Roman Catholics, his well-written Institutes of the Christian Religion, which provided a lot of focused interest by people. It's one thing to just say you have some different views, but if you actually put them as a systematic, he's really huge in that regard. And his commentaries are impressive. They're impressive in how thorough they are. He doesn't have a commentary on Revelation, I believe, and a few other things, but he has most of the scriptures some kind of commentary on it. And it's an impressive body of work. His commentaries have been significant, impactful. His Institutes of the Christian Religion has been highly impactful, and he taught a lot of preachers and missionaries. The number of missionaries that went out to the New World, like to Brazil and other places, from Geneva, is significant. So I agree that he's very impactful. Obviously, I know that I have a bias towards him because of my similar theology, but it's hard. It's getting increasingly hard for me to pick people who, because there's so many great, partly because there's so many great choices to choose from of people who have had very high levels of impact that are still on this list. And also there's a little bit of trouble because I'm just not sure always how to rank one versus another because of the very different kinds of impact. So I will take, let's see. I will take some of the choices are very interesting. I will go I'll go with one of our readers' comments. He pointed out Palamas is very significant, and he's very significant for Eastern Orthodoxy. I'm not sure he's going to end up making my top 10, but I'll try to address why I think he's significant. I do agree that the distinctively Eastern Orthodox views that are around today do seem to owe a lot of their distinctive qualities to Gregory Palamas. So he's sort of a Luther figure, but for Eastern Orthodoxy. My challenge, the reason I'm putting him a lot lower on this list is because I'm not that comfortable viewing Eastern Orthodoxy as a major branch of Christianity, not because it's not worshiping the true God, but because of how corrupt it is in terms of having as a central focus the worshiping of God through images. It's a definitional part. It's hard to say that you're really an Eastern Orthodox if you don't have icons and venerate them. It's really central to it. So I'm not thrilled with that. I'm also not thrilled with some other aspects, but I'm not saying that people are unsaved just because they're in the Eastern Orthodox Church, and it is a very large branch within that. So despite my discomfort, I do think he should be on the list. And I'm not sure I would agree with any of his points except for the rejection of the papacy. I'm not sure how much of the other points. Maybe his rejection, even in his rejection of purgatory, I don't think he rejects it in the same way I would. But anyway, that's someone I'll throw on there. Palamas. I don't know if you have any thoughts on Palamas. I'm guessing he probably isn't on your top 10.
So he is the Essence Energies distinction guy, and he is anti-filioque, right?
He is anti-filioque, the filioque clause. I'm going to drop him in your tier D at the moment.
Oh, yeah. If you switch over, so where to put him? You can put him in front of Origen.
Or Origen.
You can put you can
in front of Beza? In front of Jerome?
No, not in front of Jerome. You can put him in front of Beza. Let's situate him there, but he's probably not going to end up on my top 10. But yeah. Hey Colton, so why do I have Aquinas on S or A instead of S? So it's not that he doesn't deserve. Like, if it came to like the sheer intellectual power, Aquinas is probably the top of this list. But I think like Luther started the Reformation. Athanasius dealt with Arianism. Augustine dealt with both Donatism and Pelagianism. what did Aquinas knock out, right? Like, so I think that's the only thing that's holding me back. But I get the point. I mean, I kind of want to put all of them in S, but I'm only going to go 10. So, like basically there's only so many places. All right. Let's see. So next up for me is going to be tough. I am going to go with this is a tough one. I'll go Arminius here, and you can put him on B tier. So
I know I saw him here before. He was toward the.
He's on the left side. So, or although you probably shuffled around.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You said B?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So basically, Calvinism kind of had this ironclad grip on the Reformed Church. Now, within the Anabaptist side, there were still people that were not Calvinistic and didn't hold to predestination, still held to, I guess, libertarian free will and all that sort of thing. But people kind of looked at the Anabaptists as kind of, hey, they're running around with scissors, it was a little bit wild and woolly. Whereas Arminius was very sober, very systematic, intellectual, and he had broad shoulders, enough that he could take all the slings and arrows that were being thrown at him when he started to explain predestination in different ways than Calvin. And I think he was extremely helpful. And of course, the church ended up splitting, but his impact was broad. The whole, how many denominations now are Arminian? Methodists and Assemblies of God and the Nazarenes, and this and that, right? They're all generally Arminian. So the impact is huge. He was the first to crack the egg, so to speak. So, and then his writings, as far as systematic theology, they're excellent. The only thing people will say is, oh, it's so systematic that it's boring, or whatever the case might be. But man, I find them really helpful. So I'll put him in the B tier.
Sounds good. Let's see. I've put him on that B tier as well, which is a little bit lower ranking probably in the overall scheme of things. It's currently the lowest one I've put. Not because he's very low. He clearly does have a large impact, just because I think almost everyone on our list has a lot of impact. So I definitely agree that he's very significant. I don't know whether his significance, I think his significance to people who would be classified as Arminian is different from the significance of Calvin to those who would be described as Calvinist. But he does cast a long shadow. The odd thing to me is how few of his works are kind of widely read. Like, it seems like when, like, a few years ago, it was hard to find. Now that they're on the internet, it's quite a lot easier to find. But it seemed before that it was kind of a little bit hard to get hold of some of his writings. I don't know if they're still all easily accessible on the internet or not. You might know better than I do about that. But yeah, he's definitely significant, and I'll put him as as a highly significant person. I haven't put anybody in the low category yet. Maybe I'm fanboying too much for everybody. Let's see. Some of these I'm passing over because I don't see now. If I had before, when I was talking about Palamas, I would also group Mark of Ephesus with Palamas. So let's see. I would treat those as a group. I may have to go back and revise some of these things. Let's see. Well, who else to cherry pick from here as very significant? Sorry for the dead air.
No, no.
I'm going to put Ambrose of Milan. No. I'm going to grab Erasmus. You rightly pointed out not long ago. That he is a giant. He was very significant for the outbreak of the Reformation. I would probably view Erasmus as I would put him as an A tier. I think his effect on the Reformation was just enormous, not so much because he produced the first printed or published the first Greek New Testament, because that was going to happen anyway. But I think partly because of his ability to fight the establishment, not just go along with the establishment, and the fact that he did so to some extent at the risk of his life, but at the same time he managed not to get himself killed. As far as I can recall, he didn't get himself killed, but he definitely stood up to authorities, and his Greek New Testament ended up being very significant for the Protestant Reformation because it's the one that Tyndale used, it's the one that Luther used, and it was very, very significant for the breaking out of the Reformation. It led others to do printings to try to improve the text that he had, like Stephanus and Beza eventually. So yeah, I would rank him pretty high, although I'm putting him right now higher than Palamas and Gregory, because even his work is even more significant outside of Western Christianity on the Eastern churches as well. But I think ultimately, certainly more of a Western influence. That's not to say I like any of his theology. I'm not sure I agree on many of the things where he bucks the establishment. It's less on the theological bucking of the establishment and more of like pointing out frauds and phonies. Publishing Valo's works, that was a huge thing. But yeah, I'm not endorsing his theology, of course. So
Very good. Okay, I see a comment from Carl. Hey, Carl. So Augustine and Aquinas are top two, whether one agrees with all they said or not. Yeah, I get that. There's some sense in which I totally agree, and let's just scrap the list. But it's I can't dislodge. For me, I cannot dislodge Athanasius from the number one. I just can't. The issue, the whole Athanasius contra moment. The issue was the church was almost about to go Arian. Like if you look at the turning point of history, right? How is history all that different if Aquinas didn't exist? But if Athanasius wasn't there, if maybe Arianism gets quite a bit further than it did, and it got very, very, very far. So that's my only reservation there. But I agree with you. Like when you just think of theologians, they're better theologians. They're better thinkers overall than even Athanasius, although Athanasius is no slouch. And can we add Cherry Duckworth onto let's see. What's below D tier so we can put that? No. Thank you for your comments, Cherry. We appreciate you. Yes. So we can. All right.
Where are you dropping Erasmus in yours? Is he D tier or is he somewhere else?
Yeah, you can put him in front of Palamas, right behind Jerome.
Alrighty.
Yeah, I agree with. Yeah, I mean, the main thing I love about Erasmus is the Textus Receptus, which was really, really, really important. In fact, I will go as far as to say is I don't think until very recently that it was improved upon. Right? Like with all the work that was done, with because of the influence of Westcott and Hort, they kind of took it down bad road, and only now are the texts that we're getting better than what Erasmus did.
Well, do you think
Now,
Stephanus improved?
Sure, yeah, but I mean, Stephanus built off of Erasmus, right? But I mean, I get your point. What I'm saying is, the like Nestle Allen 27. I would use Erasmus's work before that. I really would.
Wow.
Yeah, because they just favored old text rather than large numbers of text. It's only recently that they've started to come back and say, oh, wait a minute, no, you need both age and large numbers of text and stuff like that. So, long story short, I have a higher appreciation of what he did there. Now my next guy is going to be super controversial, and it's a write-in. It's not on this list, so you don't have to dig him out. I'm going to go with John Locke.
How do we do write-ins with this? Is there a way?
You don't. We'll just remember that I threw John Locke on there. So, okay. I mean, I think there might be some way to upload, but let's not mess with that. So, the biggest problem with John Locke is, of course, he was an Enlightenment philosopher and a rationalist, and so he said that the Trinity is very complicated. Now, it doesn't mean that he rejected it. He just said it was very complicated. But that's not why he's on the list. In fact, that would keep him way, way, way off the list. But what he dealt with was the divine right of kings. And frankly, Europe had gone down bad road where everyone was chasing each other around with sticks and throwing each other into boiling pots and burning each other at the stake. And it was really bad. And, everybody was basically killing each other. That's not a good situation to be in. And a part of that was this doctrine of divine right of kings. And a bigger part of that was the lack of a separation between church and state. And John Locke's refutation of the divine right of kings and his establishment of government based on the consent of the people and his plea for religious toleration got baked into the U.S. legal system. Then it happened. Then it worked. Then the world saw, wait a minute, this is better. And then everyone copycatted and a bunch of big chameleons changed up, right? And it changed the world. So I got to give, now, I can't give Locke all the credit for that because those ideas go back to some of the Anabaptists. But the Anabaptists were not saying it in a convincing way, and they had so much, they were too wild. So the message just wasn't coming across, even though they had some similar ideas. But the fact that we're not trying to kill each other is really helpful. So I have to pick somebody, and I'll give Locke some credit for that. So I would, you have to imagine a picture of John Locke and slide him into B tier for me.
Okay. Let's see if I can make a picture of Locke. I don't know if I can. It might be a little bit hard. I haven't thought much about, frankly, I just haven't thought much about John Locke as a general principle since I don't know, the last 20 years. It didn't occur to me that he might be on the list. Your argument's an understandable argument for it. I just, yeah, I'm not sure how. I guess I'm not sure how to throw him on that. I just also I just haven't studied him enough to know whether I agree with your historical conclusions about his significance in that. What you're saying makes sense, though. So I don't know. I'm not disagreeing with you, and I'm also not, hopefully, not committing to agreeing. See if I've been able to succeed in getting a. Yeah, I got a little icon for him. I'm going to tentatively put him at the bottom of my list, and then let me share that. And hopefully I can quickly do the same on yours. Not that one.
Oh, nice work. Yeah, that's him.
It's not a terribly. How did it work? Yeah. Sorry, I'm not used to this interface. So where were you putting him on your list?
So on my list, I'll put him on the B tier behind Arminius.
Okay. All right. Like that, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now let's go back. I'll trust you that he's lower than Arminius, and I'll leave him there for now. I mean, I trust you that he is lower. I'll put him there because I don't feel comfortable weighing him myself. I just don't feel like I know enough about the subject. Let's see. This one's mine. All right. Let's see who else I can add to this. Some of these are notorious heretics, and some are highly significant figures. I think Ignatius of Antioch is a really big one. That's very significant that we haven't included yet in our list. Sorry. I would put Ignatius of Antioch higher than Origen in his influence. And I'm not suggesting that I agree with everything he said, but I think his willingness early on to be a martyr shocked a lot of people. And that willingness to be a martyr inspired others to be brave in the face of Roman persecution. To some extent, I think it served as inspiration for Origen. It led to a lot of people creating pseudographic letters from Ignatius, but even his authentic letters are kind of poorly preserved. Yet, I think some of his ideas are hugely influential in an outsized way, and partly it's because he's so early in church history that they have this outsized impact. In some cases, I think that impact has become very distorted, things focused in the wrong way. His view of the monoepiscopacy had a huge impact. I don't believe with some of the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox folks that he was just representing what was standard at his time. I think he was really pushing the idea of a monoepiscopacy beyond what was the norm at the time. And what he pushed did become the norm later. And I think it's partly his influence that's significant in that. So I'm ranking him pretty high on this list. Not as high as Luther, although it's kind of tough for me to it's kind of tough to compare the two. Their impact is so different. But anyway, that's where I'm putting him. I don't know. Any thoughts on Ignatius of Antioch?
As much as I appreciate his martyrdom, I mean, I guess a lot of people at the time were martyrs, like Polycarp and Justin Martyr, obviously. So, but you're saying that he shocked people with it, and I have to consider that. I hadn't thought of it in that light. And as far as the monoepiscopacy, yeah, that's that's well, I'll set that aside for now. Although I get it, I get what you're saying. It became very impactful. So where do I put him? Put him just after Jerome. Perfect. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Who next? So for me, this is a tough one. I'm thinking possibly Jonathan Edwards for the First Great Awakening, but I'm going to go a different route. I'm going to go Anselm. And for a lot of reasons, I mean, certainly he's a great thinker, but primarily his work in terms of the satisfaction theory of the atonement is just vital. And I don't think he invented it the way, like people say that he invented it and stuff like that. That's not the case. Okay, so on that row, down one, there you go. Yeah. But he articulated it, and to me, you can put him on B tier, yeah. It clarifies the gospel in a very significant way. And so I really, really appreciate that about him. And it's almost to the point where once you see it, what Anselm was saying is like Christ died for us, like the wages of sin is death, Christ died for us. Once you see it, you almost can't unsee it. And I'm not saying he's the first to see it, but I'm really glad that he did and articulated things in the way that he did. He's famous for other things too. Some of his arguments for the existence of God, I certainly appreciate a lot of what he had to say, but I'll go ahead and put him there. I feel bad that I think I'm only at 9, so I can put one more on there. Okay, so I have to think hard about who that last one is, but I'll pause here.
All right. Let's see if I can remember where I found Anselm last time. Yeah, here it is.
Yeah.
So I would put Anselm. I agree that Anselm's very significant. I'm a little bit torn about whether he's more or less significant than Arminius. I'm going to say I think I'm going to move Palamas below Arminius and Anselm, and I'm going to keep. I put him here. I agree with your points about he is a very significant author. His emphasis on the atonement had an important impact. There's actually somebody who's not on this list that I would put higher than him from that period. At least I think he's not on the list. There's a lot of people on the list. But
Bernard?
I was thinking about let me see. Yeah, Peter Lombard.
Oh, the sentences guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I would put him higher. I didn't see him on the list. But yeah, I would say Anselm is very significant. And I agree with you that his atonement ideas were not new, but he definitely was influential in promoting them. So I definitely rank him very high. I want to add somebody who I don't think will be very controversial to rank him high, but maybe as high as I'm ranking him, you'll disagree. I'm going to put Chrysostom in my A tier. And my reasoning is this. I think that Chrysostom, because of the beauty of his language and the general orthodoxy of what he had to say, had just a really enormous impact on Christian theology, both in the East and as well to some extent in the West, sometimes through echoes of what he's saying being brought across, bits and pieces being brought across to the West. as opposed to having the same kind of influence that he had in the East. But he had a huge influence in the East. And his influence, I think he also had a huge influence on the text of Scripture. I think his sermons and commentaries were so influential that his versions of the text of Scripture became had a very dominant and outsized impact on the transmission of the Greek New Testament. Not always for good, but sometimes probably for good. And that's so I put him there, and I'm putting him ahead of Calvin, partly because I'm sure Calvin would want that. Calvin had a lot of respect for Chrysostom and thought he was he wanted to write. He wrote commentaries on scriptures. After that, he wanted to write commentaries on Chrysostom. He never got around to it because he was taken to be with God before he could write those. But he wrote the introduction to his commentary on Chrysostom. So,
yeah, I mean, I wish I could throw everyone in S tier, but I can't. And Chrysostom, what impact did Chrysostom have? I mean, he was a prolific writer. I think he's like maybe next to Augustine, like the second most writings that we have from a church father, right? And but see, here's the thing. I can't tie his name to stamping out this particular heresy, and I can't tie his name to promoting a specific idea like Anselm. So I can't give him more impact than Jerome. So if you could slot him behind Jerome. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So I think I've got to give number 10 for me, right?
Yes.
This is hard. So either Jerome slides up. We have Jonathan Edwards or Wesley, who played huge roles in the Great Awakening. We have, tough ones. I'm going to go with Jerome. Bump Jerome up into C tier, and he squeaks into the top 10. And throw Wesley and Edwards in for honorable mentions into my D tier.
What? Charles Wesley or
John Wesley.
John Wesley.
Yeah.
I know he's here somewhere. Pretty sure.
I think he's near the top.
Let's see.
Wait.
There
he is.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. After Jerome.
Well, yeah, or D. But anyways, yeah, that's fine.
And then what the other one was?
Jonathan Edwards, because of the Great Awakening.
I remember seeing Edwards somewhere on here. There he is. So Wesley and Edwards you're adding because of the Great Awakening. I've got to add them now to mine as well. I don't have to redo Jerome because I already had Jerome. Let's see if I can find them again. There's Wesley. And Edwards was towards the bottom. I think it was. Pretty sure.
Oh, to the right. Yeah, there you go.
As much as I wish Edwards was more significant than Wesley, I would definitely put Wesley above Edwards. I think I would put Wesley ahead of Palamas. I would put Edwards behind Palamas. I wish that Edwards was more influential. I think he was significant for the not so great awakening. Let's see. I have some skepticism about how great that is. Let's see. There's Now we kind of picked it. We described it as a top 10. And you brought in a couple of honorable mentions, and I don't think anyone's going to be upset with us if we don't stick to exactly 10. Let's see who else from here is fairly significant. It's hard for me to pick. Like MacArthur is on this list. He's very influential today. There's lots of people that are listening to him, but he's not yet that big in church history because we haven't given, time hasn't told.
Yeah,
I don't feel like I can put him on. And it's not an insult to MacArthur. It's just that time hasn't told. I don't know whether his impact will be significant. He's done a lot of work. He has like huge Bible commentaries, lots of sermons. Lots of people are interested right now in what he has to say. John Henry Newman is really significant in the counter to the English Reformation. I'm not sure how much I like to put him on the list. He's definitely very significant.
So, like, interesting. Like, I would think that Bellarmine should be very close, but I mean, I wouldn't put him there either. But Robert Bellarmine, for whatever reason, like shows up everywhere when it comes to opposing the Reformation.
Ellen White for the SDAs, very significant for them. Joseph Smith for the Mormons. Charles Taze Russell. Who else?
Philip
Servetus is not one of the most influential theologians. Let's see. Marcion also not that influential as a theologian. John Piper, similar answer to MacArthur. Yeah, he's got a big following, but it's too early to say. Justin Martyr is pretty significant.
C.S. Lewis, I really love C.S. Lewis. I mean, if it was, yeah.
Do you want to add C.S. Lewis somewhere on your list?
Nah,
but let me.
He gets a mention, but I don't. He's not at that level. Those people up there are giants.
I'm going to put Maximus the Confessor on my list. And I'm going to put Maximus the Confessor just above Arminius. He is a very significant. He's a surprisingly significant church. Now I want to make sure I get correct which heresy he was known for opposing. Because my recollection was that he's notable for his opposition to monothelitism, and that he's famous. His way of being martyred was really horrible. But yeah, I think that's what. Yeah, I just double checked to make sure I'm correct. I think he's one of those important bridging theologians who, he opposed monothelitism to the death, and he's at least I think that's correct. I'm pretty sure that's correct. And yeah, his writing, I'm not saying I agree with everything he says, but he was significant in kind of reversing the flow. And that's why I'm giving him a pretty high ranking there.
Okay, so something's going on here. You have,
or did I put it in yours? No,
that's fine. No, you got 18 dudes in S, A, and B. So you got to call the ball.
Oh no, it's left to right, and then so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If we're cutting off at 10, Athanasius is my final choice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. All right.
That's my system. So the question is,
we have Athanasius and Jerome swapped. Is that right? Holy smokes!
Let's see. Apparently, yes. Where would you want Maximus the Confessor to be on yours? D, somewhere in the D tier, I'm assuming.
Above, put him in front of Palamas.
If I can find him again.
I mean, yeah. You just, man. I would put Irenaeus pretty high. Yeah, but well, yeah, you can put him up there.
I can't find him anymore.
Okay, well, don't worry about it. Oh, he's to your right, just next to Pelagius, between Hildegard and Pelagius. Yeah.
Okay, and you said where would you put him? So just above Palamas?
Put in front of Palamas. Yeah.
Okay,
that's fine. Yeah.
All right. So then the question is, the other question everyone wanted to know apparently is where's Leighton Flowers? Again, the impact is too early to tell. He's a contemporary theologian, so also the same problem for his debate opponent, Mr. Duckworth, who wants to be D tier. It's too early to tell. So let's see. All right. So if there's other, if you're in the audience and you're watching, this is your last chance to have an impact on our list of theologians who have an impact. As we go through here, if you see other ones you wanted to add, I know you mentioned somebody's name. Irenaeus.
Yeah, Irenaeus. I mean, I hate that he didn't make my top 10, but
you can put him in there. Nobody's going to say anything.
Yeah,
you can drop him in right behind Jerome if you want.
I mean, there's so many good ones.
Or behind Edwards, or above Chrysostom, however you like.
Yeah, the problem with top 10 is you have to end at 10. So, but yeah, there's so many that I wish I could add. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so we'll freeze it here, and unless there's other audience demands. Oh, you already answered this one. Sorry. Let's see. Warfield. Someone says Warfield should be D tier, and he's one of the reasons why so few people can articulate the doctrine of an eternal generation. Warfield is certainly someone people should read. I think it's valuable to understand what Warfield has to say. I'm not sure he's not going to make my top 10 list. You could see it. Go ahead.
If you made a top 10 list, not in terms of impact, but in terms of scholarship, he's got a better shot at making it if he doesn't actually just make the top 10. But in terms of impact, his biggest impact was probably foundational material for the Battle for the Bible in terms of inerrancy and stuff like that. But even then, he's just too early to really be in the throes of things. So, and he adopted Darwinism. So yeah, no.
I'm now going through your list, trying to turn them into numbers, and just through the top 10, so that I can do a side-by-side comparison somehow. Locke, you have Locke at number 8.
Yeah.
And Psalm 9. And
Jerome is number 10.
Number 10, with some honorable mentions, which are, and then switching over, let's see. My very I'm way too eager to put people at the top level and too hesitant to put them lower levels. It results in a distorted take, I guess. Or who knows, maybe everybody deserves to be on such a high level. Calvin, Beza. My 10th ends up being Athanasius. All right, so let me try to do the quick analysis. Are we going to weight the cumulative vote? Is that how it works, or Like first place is worth 10 points and then 9 points and so forth? Or
I don't know. I didn't. Okay, well, we can. You lead on this one because well, okay, yeah. Actually, that's interesting. So yeah, where do we overlap? So, okay, yeah. So if I guess numerically, the ones with the lowest score between the sum of the two of us would be the ones we agree on that go to the top, right?
yeah, I mean, if we're just, I assume I assume that we're not going to take into account that you're putting some in C, and I'm not putting any in C. It shouldn't count for more votes for that guy because I didn't put him in C.
Oh, right. So if they're not on the top 10, we have to score them 11 or higher, right? Like, you know, if we were to do a sum, but we don't have to do that. I mean, okay, well, if you want to, that's fine. You must have something that you're working, some document you're working on, but I can just tell. So it looks like Augustine is probably going to come out pretty good here.
Yeah, I'm going to go through and so Athanasius gets 11. The way I'm counting it, first place is 10 points, second place is 9, and then 10th place down is 1 point.
Okay.
So Athanasius scores an 11. Luther gets a 9 plus 7 is 16. Augustine gets 8 plus 9 is 17. Basil gets just 7. Aquinas gets 6 plus 8 is 14. Let's see. Calvin gets 5 plus 3 is 8. Who's next? Arminius. Arminius gets 4. Locke gets 3. Anselm gets 2 because he didn't make some of these didn't make my top 10. Jerome gets 11. That's interesting. We're exactly flipped on Jerome and Athanasius. Who else on my list that wasn't on yours? Ignatius. Origen. Yeah, Origen, but also Ignatius. Ignatius got 6. And then Origen gets 5. This is an interesting way of trying to rank it all. Chrysostom 4. And Calvin, we already did. Beza's 2. So Beza gets one of the lowest scores. Did I do Jerome correctly? I guess Jerome should be 11. I typed it in wrong. All right. Okay, now I have to sort. That's not what I wanted. All right.
Sounds like Augustine, Luther, Aquinas. Augustine, Luther, Aquinas, Calvin, probably? No. Yeah, no. Augustine, Luther, Aquinas, Athanasius, Jerome, Calvin.
So the top score was Augustine with 17.
Right.
Second place, Luther with 16. Third place, Aquinas with 14. Tie for fourth between Jerome and Athanasius with 11. In sixth place, because fourth was a tie, so we're eliminating fifth. In sixth place, Calvin with 8, then Basil with 7, Ignatius with 6, Origen with 5, Chrysostom and Arminius tied at 4, Locke with 3, beating out Beza and Anselm with 2 for our top 10. So Augustine managed to win it with 17, and Luther came a close second at 16, with Aquinas at 14. So that one of our listeners who wanted Aquinas and Augustine to be numbers 1 and 2, you almost got your wish. Just Luther happened to interfere there a little bit. So for whatever that's worth, thanks everybody who participated. Do you have other thoughts before we wrap this up, or?
No, that was great. I appreciate the opportunity to go through that with you. That was really cool.
It was fun. For a future episode, Charles of Layman's Seminary Charles Jennings has asked us to try to do some retrospective thoughts on the debates from 2024. So we're nothing if not slaves to our listeners. So just kidding around. But seriously, we would like to try to cover that. I don't know if it will be our next episode or not. But God willing, it will be an episode soon. The other things that are coming up that we need to address are, you have an upcoming debate that we might want to do a prep episode for. Maybe not, I don't know. But perhaps we can do a prep episode for that. But at least we can promote your debate, which is, what day? Do you remember?
I have to look. It's on the topic of hell, whether it's annihilationism versus eternal conscious torment. It's going to be on Standing for Truth, and it's late January. But go ahead. Let me see if I can spot it.
Okay.
I don't think
I think it's like the 19th or something like that. I know the number might be way off.
That sounds right. I just I just don't want to misspeak. But it's with Curious Christianity. But when it is, I'll see if I can find it.
And Chapa, Curious Christianity. Let's see if it's already up posted. It should come back with a quick hit, and I don't see it, so it might not be posted yet.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the plan. Sometime in January, debate on annihilationism, contra annihilationism, obviously from Dan's perspective, with Curious Christianity, who I debated in 2024. Seamus wants to recommend Francisco Suarez and Molina too. Molina, we should have put Molina on there somewhere. He definitely was impactful, but I don't know if he'd make it quite in the top 10. Suarez, also pretty impactful, for sure.
Well, again, if you did it on scholarship, Suarez would be, really, really high up on the list.
He's definitely a scholar.
Yeah.
Let's see. Other things that are coming up, possibly, although I shouldn't say possibly. Chris Date and I plan to have a debate on hell, which was sparked by comments that were made during my previous debate on hell. But it's not the planned focus of this channel, the conversations in hell for the next.
No. Yeah, I want to get out of that business, but yeah, I mean, it is important. It's an important topic, but I'm also looking forward to getting past it too.
There will be other. I think there's a James 2 debate that I may have in the works as well, maybe in February. So God willing, we'll have some more debates for people who are debate junkies to follow. But for now, is there any other comments you wanted to address before we wrap things up? I don't know if you've been following along. Yeah, we mentioned him.
Yeah.
Bellarmine is definitely one of those top scholars, very influential. I was surprised he wasn't on the list. If I were to put him on the list, I'd probably put him above Edwards for sure in his significance, probably above Palamas in his significance, probably below Wesley, but maybe above Wesley. I don't know, but less than Anselm. Yeah, he's very significant for Roman Catholic theology for a few hundred years. Not so I don't feel like he's so significant today, just because of how far Rome has gone from Tridentine Roman Catholicism, but certainly the traditional Roman Catholics would still view him as very significant, I think. So,
yeah.
What else? I think that's it. So thanks to the Twitchy theologian, Seamus C., Michelle Sherry, KJV, Jerry Duckworth, Truth Defenders, Carl Peterson, Colton Carlson, let's see who else. Pseudo Jerome of Prague, the Pseudo Czech Pseudo Jerome, Houston Euler, Algo OPC, I think that's everybody. Thank you very much for participating. If you catch this afterwards, then please feel free to leave your comments. Try to persuade us to change our top 10. Maybe get Luther bumped farther down the list or something. I don't know. Or bumped higher on the list if you like. Anyway, all right. Any other final words, final thoughts?
No, I appreciate it. So happy New Year, everybody. And thank you, Turn Fanning. God be with you.
And also with you.